Hey everyone, Matt from Soundrolling.com, and you're joining me, 2018. We're finally getting back to doing the sound chats, and today I'm with Jono Cary. So, hey Jono, how's it going?
Hello, how's it going, Matt? You all right?
Yeah, not too bad. So we're gonna, if those of you who don't know how this works, basically we're just gonna hang out, have a sound chat. But obviously this is live as well, so you can kind of ask your questions at the side of this YouTube video. I don't know which direction it is. There's a minute or two delay, so don't get stressed that I'm not answering your question. We'll kind of feed things in as they go along. And I see we already have a fair few people joining already, so hello everyone. So Jono, classic way to start is how you started. So just give me a bit of background as to how you got into kind of location sound, and when did sound kind of first start for you?
Yeah, cool. So, I mean, location sound for me was something I slightly fell into because I was previously working in a music studio that I ran. I recorded bands and worked with bands where you had sort of people from A&R would be interested in them, labels would be interested in signing them. They weren't at the point yet where they could sign them on the back of the demos that they'd created at home, but they wanted to kind of develop them a bit more. So before they go and spend all the money on a producer in a bigger studio, and this is back in the days when there was a lot more money in the music industry, you know, I would be able to work with them and that kind of thing. And it was going well. It was a good business and I enjoyed it. One of the challenges of it I found was often being the only one that was kind of techie as well as creative in the room. So there might be 4 or 5 people in a band and they're having a great time and, you know, staying up late and all the things that go with a rock and roll lifestyle. And you have to be the one that's kind of completely on it with the technology and with whatever you're working with there. So I found sometimes, you know, it could be a bit of a solo thing that. So I started bringing in people just to record voiceovers, you know, when we're there in the daytime and the studio's empty. If a band wasn't in, it would be nice to get voiceover and ADR sessions and that kind of thing to be done at the studio, which went well. And obviously through that, I started to build up a contact of directors and producers who'd come through with actors and would, you know, they'd all meet and they'd often not have seen each other for, you know, 3-6 months or whatever when they come to do these sessions. And then they're like, oh, how was it? You know, how's thing? You know, and they're talking about that day that they all shot together, or maybe it was 3 days, or maybe it was several months. And I'd always feel like a bit jealous. I was like, oh man, it sounds like you guys had a great time doing that. And, you know, they were talking about all the people on set. And I was sort of thinking, man, I'm kind of missing out there because it sounds like there you're hanging out with a load of people who are both creative and they're techie or nerdy or whatever you want to call them. And so, you know, a lot of my very close friends now are all camera guys. And actually, I find that we get on really well because they're creative and they're techie at the same time, which is kind of a rare breed. And I found myself, you know, really just from a social point of view, really aligning with those people. And that was the beginning move into it. I then sort of started to work out ways of how I could reposition myself from studio work to location work. And it came as some surprise when it's like, so hang on a minute, all I've got to do is gain and mix level. And it's like, there's no EQ, there's no compression. It's like, no. You just deal with it. And it's like, okay, you know, because going from a sort of a 64 channel board down to, you know, 4 or 5 faders was like a big jump. And then I suddenly realized actually what you're dealing with or what you're worrying about now is not so long, you know, it's no longer the, you know, the compression attack time. It's like, there's a whole lot of other stuff to do with wireless and time code and just personnel and everything else. So that was the beginning of the move for me.
Amazing. And just give us a time frame in terms of that. Like, when did you first kind of like, did you start out when you were 16? Did you start out like?
Yeah, it's kind of, I've had a lot of careers bleed on top of one another. The first thing I did, I finished, just about finished my A-levels, which were in physics and music and electronics and stuff like that. And I started DJing full time just halfway through that A-level course. So I was DJing 3 nights a week and I was promoting nightclubs. And at the same time, I was meeting bands and working with them. I was at that point interested in being an electronic music producer, working with bands, having that kind of crossover. And for people that follow bands like the Mystery Jets or something, I was friends with those guys. And people like Errol Alkan were people that I'd look up to who dance remix of indie band stuff. That's one of the things that kind of got me more and more into thinking that could be a career for me. So I did that for a few years. It then kind of it bled into me playing drums and being in a band full time myself, still DJing all the while and still promoting some of these nights. And then it kind of bled over into just doing music full time. and doing that. And I would say, the location work's been 7-8 years now of that's all I've been doing. This is the first job where I've only done this job and I've left all the other ones to the wayside. Primarily just because it takes up so much time and it's knackering, and so the days off are, really enjoyed. But yeah, I still DJ. I don't really do it for money so much anymore. I get to pick and choose some sets and enjoy those. But I'd say it's been 7 or 8 years now of just doing this, and a bit longer of doing this and some music stuff at the same time.
Amazing. Yeah, it's great. It's really interesting. Like when people say, "Oh, like you've got a really interesting career," it's more like a lifestyle than an actual career path, because there's so many kind of nuances put together. So, I mean, one of the things we mainly wanted to talk about was the kind of freelance lifestyle. But let's take it back to this kind of understanding when you went from that 64 channel board all the way down to kind of four channels instead. A load of other problems and kind of things that you had to focus on, as well as the actual gear itself in terms of maintenance obviously came up. So talk to me a bit about your kind of DIY approach.
Yeah, I mean, I think, and obviously, like for every different mixer and for every different person I've met in this industry, and they are so varied, and there's so many different opinions out there about how to kind of run your business, and that's what it is really. I consider myself the same as an electrician or a plumber or someone like that who has tools of the trade, and they have their vehicle and they get around and they procure work through the internet or through word of mouth or the Yellow Pages, and then they go out and get work. And I think that for me, anyway, I've always found that being self-sufficient is really important. So I find myself feeling very nervous if I don't know every bit of a signal path or every bit of a piece of gear. So if I buy a new piece of gear, there's no way I'll take it out the next day. I'll know the manual better than the person that wrote the manual before I take the piece of gear out. That way, you stumble a lot less. And it's always tempting, with new bits of kit or with stuff that you're buying or making, just to go, it's going to be fine, and don't read the manual and just dive in and go for it. But actually, it trips you up really quickly, and you get that horrible butterflies in the tummy moment when you're on set and you go, actually, I don't know how this thing works, or actually, I don't know how to fix this bit of kit or whatever. And, it's really worth actually kind of drilling in and understanding those bits of kit. As for DIY, I did electronics as an A-level, and I've always been keen on electronics. I could have probably gone on and done a degree in it or focused my time on that, but I've always found like the way things work fascinating, particularly with all the kit that we use in this industry, and all the kit in the music industry and instruments and stuff. Just vibrating waves, man. That's they're interesting, and it's cool seeing all the different ways that they can be picked up and moved along and digitized and all this kind of stuff. So I've found that like DIYing my kit, I make all my cables, I make all my timecode cables, I make all my audio cables. I do my level best to repair all my kit when and where I can, if it's not too specialist. And I think that's really important to me. I also am a great believer in sharing that information back, because I know that when I started off in my music studio, we dry hired a space of just square foot, and we had to build these boxes inside the space, and then deck the whole thing out, cabling through and putting looms in, and even doing the electrics in the place and all that stuff. So I knew that when if there was a bass player in the live room and I'm sat there in the control room and they plug in and I can't hear it, or it's fuzzy or whatever, I know from the mono jack cable into the DI box, from there into the patch bay into the back of the patch in the control room, the whole signal path all the way through till it goes into Pro Tools. I've made and built all that, so I know where, if there's an error, that's the first place to look. And I find that approach in building all your own stuff makes you feel super confident when you go out on set. And I think that confidence is what I feel must help me get rebooked for work, because if there is an issue, it's solved straight away. And when you're doing commercial projects, there's no excuses but to have it solved straight away. And when you're doing documentary projects and you're in the middle of nowhere, you're not necessarily expected to fix it straight away, but being a problem solver really, really helps you get more work and really helps you, enjoy the time with your clients.
Yeah, no, I think it's a massive advantage just to be able to go, okay, well, like for instance with our location sound kit, you're right. Okay, I'll just start on the left and work my way through the right. If it's not going to camera, it's like, is it the microphone? Is it this? Is this? And then just having that kind of almost flow chart to be able to problem solve. And that's obviously one of the major factors that definitely gets people rehired. I still have several people, and it's been like how to put a, not even my own kit. It's like how to put a teleprompter together, because some of those things are just like ridiculous. They run with all these like crazy mirrors and shit. And they're still talking about like, oh yeah, Mac can like fix anything, and I only fix like a ridiculous teleprompter that's basically an iPad and a mirror, but with like all this crazy other.
And it's understanding, like with understanding signal path, you'll understand like what are unbalanced or balanced signals, what are line level signals, and the minute you start to understand those things, actually it can really save your bacon. I've had a situation where we had two Alexas on a shoot. A third Alexa arrived on the morning. No one told me about it. Wasn't aware of it. I'd used up all my 5-pin Limo to BNCs on that particular day. Didn't have any spares. We are kind of in the middle of nowhere. It's like, right, I need to timecode jam it somehow. Well, has anyone got a paperclip? I was like, okay. You shot the paperclip. Paperclip just very neatly and very gently goes in, pin 2 of the 5-pin Limo. Touch the BNC onto it, it jams, because it's a line level signal. It doesn't need to be grounded. You can just touch it on, bam, it's got the sync. It's okay. It's not perfect. Gently pull out the paperclip, you jammed till lunch, and knowing that would only be possible with that line level signal knowing that it's hot enough to do that without having to ground it or whatever, is the kind of thing where, oh, you just really saved the day there. And actually anyone else would have thought we need to go and send a 2-hour taxi to go and get a 5-pin Limo off someone, and it's this reassuring that was solved in 5 minutes, that problem. But likewise, stuff crops up sometimes, and it's actually just like, I find it interesting on the days where when you aren't working, if you've done 7-10 days straight or whatever, and you have those 3 days off in the middle of the week, I really like to fill them with trying to learn some new bit of kit, or how can I build that, or how can I further better my knowledge, so that when I am out on set or I am getting work, it can help. And there's so much stuff out there, and if people are comfortable mixing audio, but they don't know about doing VR or 360 style audio, binaural stuff, or whatever it might be, how do you do a really good XY capture, and how do you, all these questions, you can actually just spend the day researching them. And it's difficult to motivate yourself sometimes, but get up, have your breakfast, have a coffee, and bam, get into it. And and if you spend 6 hours doing something like that, you'll be amazed at how much better it is at the end, how much better you are at the end of the day. And that's something that I really believe in. And I think you can accelerate your career so much faster by actually just spending the time on those things. I think people sometimes, they'll spend half an hour flicking through something and won't really pay attention. And unsurprisingly, they don't learn a lot about it. You have to treat it almost like school. It has to be a bit like that.
Yeah, it still has to be drummed in, unfortunately.
Right.
And so for the people watching now and watching later, where are you just going to Google? Are you just like, okay, I've had my breakfast today, I'm gonna nail X topic? Are you just like Googling it? Are you looking for books? Have there been any kind of key resources that have helped you massively in a certain area?
Well, first of all, obviously, has to plug the channel. I mean, your channel's great.
No.
Seriously though, I mean, a lot of the stuff you share is very useful. And actually, I think it's a lot of your stuff is obviously crowdsourced, and a lot of other Facebook groups and forums and that kind of stuff are, of course, crowdsourced. No one person understands everything, and no one person has all this stuff written down in one neat website. So yeah, of course, it's Googling, but it's finding a trail of something. So if you want to know about unbalanced and balanced cables, actually half the time a question like that will just be on a manufacturer's website, or be on Reen's website, or Van Dam's website, or it'll be on a cable manufacturer's website. And there are reams and reams of information. Sometimes it's about understanding the application of a piece of information that you want to know. So something like unbalanced and balanced cabling is like, okay, well, that's cool, but in what context do I want to know about it? I mean, there's no point in reading reams of information about unbalanced electric guitar leads when you're never going to record an electric guitar in a sound devices recorder, say. You're never going to need to even plug it in. It's going to be such an unlikely set of circumstances. Although it's still true, it's an unbalanced signal. The kind of like millivolts you're looking at from a pickup compared to a mic are still different and stuff. So actually just focus in and Google a bit more carefully there, and think about what application are you thinking about, and then get into it. If it's XY recording, are you interested in doing that for like, you know, just big landscape style shots, or do you want to do nature stuff, or is it just documentary, is it city? Because then all of a sudden you'll find somebody who's into recording stereo captures for cityscapes, and they might do a whole blog about that, and then you read their stuff and they say, oh, I've, you know, bought this mic from this specialist place in Berlin. You're like, oh wow, okay, and then it takes you down that rabbit hole. But don't just set, I would say don't ever set a topic way too broadly, because you'll just find yourself lost in too much information. I think sometimes it's nice, you know, if the sun's shining, I live in Greenwich in London, sometimes if the sun's shining, it's really nice to go for a walk to the park. And actually, if you kind of go on that tangent, you go, right, well, let's go and try and record some bird song. You know, why not? Like, I have no interest in them, but why not? Let's go and try and do it. And then, you know, do a bit of learning about that. What is there a particular way to capture? What kind of levels am I going to be setting here? Like, am I anticipating things suddenly getting loud, or am I going to run the limiters, or what? You know, then you can ask yourself these questions and pump them back into Google and hunt around on Facebook and stuff. I think, you know, one other feature before we move on from that is just that, like, so many people do not use the search function on Facebook groups, and actually it's amazing. You can just be a member of groups and be very passive, and you know, hit the search and just type in things, and people never say anything on them. You know, there's about 5-10 people, I'm often one of them, who talk a lot and are vocal about things they've discovered or whatever, but a lot of people just sit back, and actually you can just use that search function to find all sorts of information, and again, just, you know, keyword searching stuff.
Nice. And I guess the main takeaway is obviously just the aspect of all our careers. I mean, once you have the kit and you've kind of read the manual, it's literally just that experience coming into play and drawing on many different areas. I mean, you talked before we got on about having a kind of different other like hobbies or things that you're doing, so it isn't just all like work, but you've also been able to make them kind of feed into your work.
Yeah,
can you just
right.
talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I mean, you know, I've like most people, you know, got varied hobbies, and I'm not just a sound guy day and night. And of course, like one of the biggest ones is music and DJing and all that kind of stuff. It's hard to find that a way of feeding that back in. Aside from, I've DJed a few rap parties, which has been good fun, and you're often remembered at the end of it, which is no bad thing. But besides that, you know, I'm really keen on motorbiking. I'm really keen on 4x4 driving. You know, I've previously been you know, a lot into kind of like wild camping and bushcraft and all that kind of stuff. So because of those kind of hobbies, I found that you can just park them and just go, that's just what I do on my days off. And for people that want to do that, that's cool. I've found ways of feeding those things back into my own work and sort of offering those services to people. The fact I can drive 4x4 cars and have certification in it is something that I can advertise as part of my CV. And all of a sudden, you know, a lot of the work I'll do will be longer running doc stuff. You know, if you are able to do that, well, you're kind of, you can kind of double up in job role there and make yourself more useful. Similarly with the motorbiking and, you know, what that offers to people being able to, you know, zoom through traffic. If it's a job that it requires into here, into here, into here, into here, I can, you know, take a small kit on my bike and work with that. And likewise, you know, one of the most recent jobs I did just before Christmas turned was a job where, you know, I was skiing with the job. And so that would be impossible if I hadn't skied my whole life. And, you know, often I think with some of those hobbies, it's trying to find a way of actually just getting it down on paper. So if you are a keen skier, you're a keen hiker, or, you know a bit about first aid, well, you know, if you've got a day off and it only costs 50 quid to do so, get a certificate for it and get it in your CV. And all of a sudden they're like, oh yeah, well, he's first aid trained. That's handy because no one else is on that shoot. So let's get that guy then. And it sounds, you know, you don't have to be a kind of jack of all trades with it. That's not the point. It's making yourself invaluable when people hire you. And, you know, they're nice ways of including your hobbies in your line of work as well. So, you know, there's no greater thing than getting paid to go skiing and record sound at the same time. And that was a career highlight. But, you know, I've done that several times now, and that is great fun. But, you know, it's a hobby and it's work, and you push the two together and you just make it work.
Yeah, and I guess now it's more about, again, like it's always just about skills and just combining, and more there's going to be more demanded from us from back in the day when there was literally a person to do absolutely every single role. Now we're seeing obviously the role of technology.
Yeah, Napoleon Dynamite, man.
Come into play. Exactly.
Yeah.
So let's take a sidestep to then go talk about gear. Everyone loves gear.
Mm-hmm.
You've got gear. I've got gear. So what gear do you have?
I currently operate, and I had to look at them occasionally just so I can remind myself what it all is. I run two main kits. I've got a 788 sound devices with the CL8 fader on it. That is basically like the bulletproof setup. That's what I would take if it's cold or hot or whatever. It's just crazily reliable. And the screen, because it's an LCD, it's not one of these more modern, I don't know, OLED color debris. It's super reliable when it gets very cold. So I've had it at -20 and it still works. It keeps itself pretty hot, which is slightly more annoying in the summer. I also then operate a small bag, a 633 in a small bag, the K-Tech Stingray Junior. That's amazing because with that setup, I use all Wizicom radios now. You can then have 4 channels of Wizicom, 2 of them being digital. So most of the time you're operating 2 radio mics with 2 as spare if the third person comes in. And you've got boom on there, and you're recording with sound devices pre's, and you've got timecode sync, and I'm sending out a client feed or just a scratch track from a Sennheiser transmitter in this tiny footprint. I mean, it really is like the size of a lunchbox. It's an incredible bag, and I really love it. And it's so weight saving on your back. I just use a small quarter brace harness on that. I don't even go with the waist or anything because it's so easy to operate that. The 788 bag, again, I just have another 6 channels of Wizzy in that. That's really reliable. And when I need the channel count, I use that. I have previously owned a 688. I did like it very much, but I found that for the I had an option of buying a 788 after buying that one. I used that one on a job. The channel count is useful on some of the reality shows I've done, but some of those shows come with their own kit anyway, or if there's a soup on there, they might actually own 3 kits and insist that you use theirs. Certainly some of the American shows that I've worked on, the kits are even sometimes owned by the production or whatever. So I think they're quite, for me, the channel count was a more specific thing. So I wanted the features of the 788, particularly doing some of the VR stuff and the fact they can do beam format internally and decode it and all these kind of things. It's got some crazy other features, which again, if you get to the end of that manual, you'll realize you can kind of remote time it to turn on at 9 p.m, record for 3 hours and switch itself off again and save battery, and then switch itself on again the next day and do the same thing. So, if you're doing nature stuff or you're doing, and it's just something weird and wonderful like that, sometimes if you know all those features, you don't realize how useful they are until that one time you're like, man, that's how we do it. And because it can just trigger itself off. So yeah, it's a super versatile bit of kit. Mics wise, all Sennheiser. I've got 2 8060s and 2 8050s. I'm in the process of getting another MKH50. I had some stuff stolen in the US last time I was there, so I'm replacing some of that. I've got some 416s. I have to say I rarely use those guys, but
yeah, they're always good to have, right?
They're really good to have. Yeah. I mean, when it's raining, they're perfect.
Yeah.
But yeah, and what other kit I use? I really like the Timecode Systems ecosystem, which I completely use now. I'd started out with them really early on. I was an early adopter of theirs. I liked it. I've always been, as with all manufacturers, I'm happy to be vocal about the flaws without being mean, but being critical of bits of kit. I think they've gone through a bit of a transition. I felt that when the Tentacle setup came out, for the money, it felt like actually it was appropriately priced compared to so many other things. And I make jokes with people and say, "Oh, can I buy this pen off you?" And you go, "Yeah, the pen's £1." And you go, "But hang on, I'm using it for the film and TV industry." And they go, "Oh, right, it's 90 quid. This is the same pen." Yeah. There's a lot of specialist kit, and I understand R&D needs to go into some of these things, but some of the electronics is simple, and there are ways of making it cheaper. I felt like Tentacle was really, really well priced, and as a result, they're everywhere now. You see them everywhere. And the vernacular for, like, Hoover is the name for a vacuum cleaner. It's like there's camera guys I know going, "Oh, have you got a Tentacle?" And then actually it's something else now. Whereas it used to be Locket by Ambient, it's now, "Oh, have you got a Tentacle?" And it doesn't matter what you put on there, they think that's a Tentacle. And I've got some Tentacles as well. They're crazy useful and so lightweight. I mean, it's unbelievable. But I use the Genlock quite a bit, so I now use the UltraSync ones. I love them. The first few firmware revisions of them had a few teething problems, but they seem to be all solved now. And yeah, other than that, I have a Smart Slate, which is a really old TS1, which I've DIY'd to hell.
Nice.
There's some pictures of that. It's a slate that used to have 8 D cells in the back of the thing, so you can imagine how heavy that would be. It's been stripped, it's got a 9-volt in it, and it now just has an Ultra Sync 1 on there. So it's like the really old and the really new bolted together. And so now it's a perfectly nice wireless timecode slate. So yeah, that's most of the kit. I've got a few specialist bits of waterproof housing, and I've got some custom built bags and stuff for things for like when it's very rainy or very snowy or very cold or whatever. But yeah, that's the bulk of the kit.
Amazing. And so talk to me about the kind of work that you're doing as well. Is it kind of more TV side of things? I mean, I know all the content kind of blurs together in this weird kind of world, but is it mainly drama, fiction?
Yeah, I could partition my work, broadly speaking, into like 3 camps. The first one is like TV doc, which I would include like some of the reality bits I do, but they often fall more under a doc thing. I don't do stuff in studios. I don't mix on OB gear or any of that kind of stuff. I might do like VTs for an entertainment show. It might be something like The X Factor or The Voice or whatever. They just need like little drop-ins to go in the show. So those VT packages, I'll work on those kind of entertainment bits. The documentary stuff I do, a lot of it these days, or the last like 18 months, 2 years, have been longer running shows that I've been on for like 3-4 months at a time. So those are sort of those long doc jobs, and some of them will be like the reality TV kind of stuff. Things like so many people have done, like Don't Tell the Brides or whatever. But I've done some other longer running shows. I did Ladies of London's last season, and hopefully this year I'm now going to be doing another longer show with the same production company, and some other shows like that. So that's kind of that TV world. The other world I do is like commercial, which I would include branded content in as well. So those are anything from a TV commercial that would be watched on ITV on a Saturday night to stuff that's just like social Instagram style things, or bits for Facebook, or little YouTube bits of content. And all of those I enjoy a lot. They're really varied. The third category sometimes bleeds into that middle category more and more, it seems to, which I would call my specialist side. So that's my binaural captures, that's my VR, my 360. That's designing weird ways of recording sound when it's just not like a guy holding a boom, radio mic, presenter person, or 2 people chatting Louis Theroux style in documentary. It's really weird and wonderful. Those are some of my favorite shoots, often the most challenging. And most of the time you find yourself going, no one's probably ever done this before, so let's just hope it works. Yeah. And it's those that I really enjoy, which I really find like I use all those skills from back when I was 13, 14 and getting interested in electronics to now. I find myself remembering something from back then. I go, okay, that's how that will work, or this is how we can make this thing work. And it's those jobs that I like a lot, and they do sometimes now more and more bleed into the branded content and commercial style stuff. As for drama, I don't really get involved in that stuff. I've done a few bits when I was starting out. I was interested in doing bits of short film and that kind of stuff. I think it's just like for me, it's a completely different world, and it's one where I think if I wanted to get interested in it, it would almost take restarting the career to go that way. I feel like looking at the route for people that I know who do work in drama, in camera department, they start young, and if you can become a trainee and then an assistant and you work your way up, and actually that path is well trodden and it works well, and it works well for a reason, because you learn every bit of kit on the way up. And I've never found that like sitting behind the faders as a mixer particularly like exactly where I want to be. I like walking around with a bag. I don't really want to be sat at a car particularly. And I also find that like having worked with crews, I've enjoyed it, but I think having that like very disciplined military style, like that is their job, this is your job, I much prefer the bleeding across of jobs. And so when I work with people who've come from, or camera guys who I know who've from a long drama background, where it's like they'll never even touch the focus, they just will never even think about it. because someone else is always doing it. I find that, like, for me personally, it's not the way I like to work. I like it when everything bleeds into one another and it crosses over. So for that reason, I don't really get involved in drama. So I was actually thinking about this before I came on, like, would I talk about what kind of work I do and all that kind of stuff? And I just thought, you know what, I barely ever work with actors, actually. Because, you know, aside from the odd commercial, most of the time it's real people. And actually, that's one thing I love about the job. It's meeting real people all the time. And so, you know, when I go to dinner with friends of mine and we're chatting about what I've been up to, I've met so many interesting people every year, new interesting people with varied interesting skills. And actually, sometimes even when you think on paper that they might be boring to someone who's creative and in TV or whatever, that actually you meet someone and, you know, they work for a large bank or corporation or whatever, and you're thinking, well, maybe I'm not going to have a lot of shared interests. And actually, they're fascinating. They've got loads of stuff to talk about. So, yeah. Anyway, that's my 3 styles of work.
No, yeah. It's really interesting. And while we're still on, because we still got a bit of time, I'm going to try and squeeze out of you. We've got loads of people watching live, but do remember at the moment, because we're live, this is the bonus of then asking the questions that I can feed to Jono as well. So we've got about 15 people, which is not bad for like the middle of a Wednesday, all over the world. So hello everyone from is it Norway? Someone else is from Chile as well. So yeah, different time zones and stuff.
Nice.
Brilliant. So work, gear, freelance lifestyle, DIY. I've got an interesting one about then how you see your career progression going forward. That kind of feels like, especially for me, you kind of get into your kind of zone. You're doing the, so like for me, it's like films and then the kind of creative content type of stuff. And it feels like, all right, I've kind of got here, and then it's kind of where to go next. So as well as with your kind of DIY or the kind of like the making it a lifestyle kind of thing and always learning, how do you see then this kind of going forward? Or do you just see this as kind of doing more? I'm just interested in your kind of thoughts.
Yeah, right. You know, it's I find that like feeling comfortable is when I feel sort of most afraid with my career.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that's the same for a lot of people, which is why I've kind of had various different job titles. I'd say they all broadly come under the umbrella of understanding about sound and electronics and that kind of thing. You know, right from DJing and promoting nightclubs and that kind of stuff. I mean, it's people and music. And drumming and working as a sound audio mixer for music and working as an audio mixer now for TV and that kind of stuff. I've always found the thing that's almost the most interesting bit is the people bit of it. The one string that is or the one sort of strain that goes through that career, along with sound and audio, is people and working with people. So you know, I'm certainly interested in potentially going down the route of some of my own productions, or even looking to produce or some sort of state direct as well. So I'm not like completely fixed in working as a sound recordist. I've really enjoyed what I've done so far, and actually when I look over my CV, I think I can remember times when I thought, I'd love to be able to do this, I'd love to be able to do that, and then you achieve those goals, and it's like finding the next one. And I remember, you know, wouldn't it be great if I, you know, got to go abroad for work? And then it's like, then you're going abroad every 2 weeks. And you're like, okay, now that's not something I want to do. I mean, the beers in the town centre in Paris are great, but now I want to do the next thing. So now I want to go to America and be paid to go to America. It's like, okay, now great, I've done that. Now I want to, you know, get this kind of a show or that kind of a show. Or I want to be on a prime, you know, I want to have a credit roll on a primetime show or something like that. And you're like, you know, it's really great to set yourself those goals, but it's important to keep setting them. And I suppose, yeah. As for looking forward, I don't think anyone should ever think anything's unachievable. I think it totally is. I think sometimes making those goals manageable and realistic, and having small ones to get along the way, even just a monthly goal or a 6 monthly goal. If you set something like, right, I want to direct a feature film, it's like, okay, that's a huge challenge to set yourself. Not an impossible challenge, but if you want to do like some stuff along the way, you can actually, that's often the route to get there, is to have those little, you know, little goals along the way. So yeah, I've got some productions this year which I'm going to be more involved in the production of and crewing them up, and you know, having almost a producer hat on, which is going to be exciting and nerve-wracking for sure. and I've often had the philosophy like, well, how hard can it be? I mean, which is what I thought about sound mixing when I first did it. And it's like, you know, you get on set, you know, the first time moving from a music studio, the first few jobs I had, it's like, wow, I do not know what I'm doing at all. And that was actually not to do with the audio kit. It was just like, okay, right, roll camera, roll sound. It's like, I didn't know at that point the on-set etiquette. I didn't understand what those titles meant. And actually, it'd be nice if you could go and get the, you know, on-set etiquette for dummies, you know, the yellow book, and just start flicking through and go, oh, okay, roll sound, okay. And actually, like, a glossary of terms is something. Actually, I know that you've put together some of this stuff, which is crazily handy. I wish I had it. But yeah, knowing those kind of things is nerve-wracking. And I think that, yeah, looking forward, I'll feel happy if I'm that nervous again, where I have no idea what the hell anyone's talking about. And then working out how to do it and going on to the next thing. I think some of the specialist stuff as well, I'll see how that goes. I'd like to, try and find a way of running a business that sort of dealt more in just that line of stuff. It's whether that's sustainable and whether that's a flash in the pan fashion thing, or whether actually there is a genuine interest in having more content with more immersive sound in it. Some of the projects I did towards the end of last year using binaural, and binaural's been around for a zillion years. It's been around really since microphones have been around. People have been messing with those ideas, and I mean, literally the first thing is almost these trumpets attached to people's ears for that's the concept of binaural has been around for that long. Actually finding creative and cool uses for that stuff, and that kind of thing is something that interests me. And stuff with POV. I mean, POV is amazing if it has binaural audio going with it, and it's not difficult to do it. Doing it right and doing it well and getting a good capture is the hard part. And so that's something that interests me a lot. And obviously a lot of the spatial audio stuff is super interesting. But again, it's like, is that going to be something in 5 years' time when, oh, people are going crazy about that and now everyone's totally sick of it? Is it just going to be the new GoPro? Is it like, oh, everything was GoPro footage on TV and now it's all gone back to being 50mm close or whatever, so it'll be interesting to see how that develops, but that's certainly another side of future work that I'm interested in for sure.
Yeah, I think that the whole VR and even again, well, I guess just the experience side of thing. Yeah, I think it's definitely going to play more of an important role, especially as we kind of maybe if Google Glass comes back again and all this kind of crazy stuff. Definitely AR as well, like augmented reality in general is super interesting. So
yeah,
I think it's definitely going to play. But like you say, maybe it's going to be like 3D. We had 3D like 40 years ago, and then now we've had 3D now. And then
there's a few really hard stumbling blocks to get over. And the number one is that and I still find this, with a VR headset, it's so socially awkward to put one on. Because you just instantly look completely nuts wearing the thing. And so you can't stick one on the tube. You can't stick one on an airplane. You can't really move around properly on an airplane either. Yeah. You feel uncomfortable wearing it because you're being immersed in another world. You're shutting yourself off from the world you're currently in. And it's very difficult unless you're in your own home and, you know the people that are already in that building and, you're not going to get someone throw a custard pie in your face or whatever. You need to feel comfortable in order to be immersed in a space. And so actually it's cool people knocking up all this content for it. But, I'm still not wholly comfortable with sticking on goggles and headphones and just going, I'm forgetting I'm in the world that I'm currently in. You can't, so it's a big stumbling block. But that said, some people would think it'd be amazing that there'd be people who would be on their phone on the London Underground or on the trains. And actually people thought that would be so socially unacceptable that it would never happen. Yeah. And now look at it, you can't find every single person on the London tube has headphones in and is just zoned into, Clash of Clans or whatever it is,
Yeah.
So I think that's one thing that we'll need to kind of move with it. But in a way, that's why I think the binaural has a lot more go because I'm a bit old fashioned with this. I like my screen and I like to hold it. And then I like the camera to show me what's going on. I sometimes think that and I've done some stuff, speaking about the VR and 360 bits, I find 360 is too much. I much prefer 180 or 270 because really what's going on behind you, I mean, you have to come back to what we are and how we're designed physically. we have eyes on the front of our head for a purpose, because we generally move our body if there's something over that way. So I think content where stuff's going on all around you is sometimes a bit bonkers. I think sometimes it makes sense to kind of vaguely direct where you're looking at, and it's nice to take a viewer on a journey rather than go, you just look wherever you want, and it's like, well, that kind of takes the magic out of direction, which is one of the things that makes something immersive or interesting or creative or whatever.
Why don't I just go stand in a field and I'll just turn around and just listen to the birds over there and the river over there, like,
and just have people on bikes go past. It's always bikes. The demo is always bikes going past. I don't know why.
No, you need flies. Flies annoy people. Fantastic. So we'll make. So we've got a few questions. Ooh. Cool. So Alejandro from Chicago says, how do you go about handling talent that doesn't want to be mic'd and wants to do it themselves? Basically, working with difficult talent.
Got you. Yeah, this is one that actually, like, for me, comes up more so probably than people who work in drama. I mean, maybe 50-50, but most of the people that I mic haven't ever been mic'd up before. So I find I almost have a little routine that I forget that I say it all the time. It's almost like a little speech that I've accidentally worked out. And I think the most important thing to do, because it is probably one of the most personal things that's going to happen to that person on that day, even if they're going through makeup and hair. Everyone has their hair cut all the time, so that's not an unusual thing to have someone touch your hair. Everyone has, like, makeup, certainly for women, is more common. For men, slightly less, but then still, like, actually having makeup put on is not the most abnormal thing. Having a microphone attached to your bra or to your chest and having a mic pack put around your tummy, if you're not comfortable with that, that is, you have to just remind yourself, even if you're doing it every day on a shoot and you're doing it for months and months and months, and then you have to remind yourself that, like, that's not a normal thing just to go meet a stranger and do that to them. And it's easy to forget that. So I think, first of all, just remind yourself, like, if this was a family member of yours, how would they feel about it? Like, would you feel comfortable watching? It's like, not really. Like, it is a bit of an uncomfortable making thing. So make them feel at ease, make them feel comfortable. So the first thing is, no matter who it is, if it's a really famous footballer or it's someone who just works in a shop that you're going to interview, it doesn't matter who they are, they're treated the same in my book. And it's, first of all, just being really clear about explaining what you're going to do. It gives them the opportunity to say, no, I don't really like the idea of that. So first of all, I might say, if we're miking up a lady who's in a dress, we'll say, okay, so I need to get a microphone and put it on probably the middle of your chest, or maybe on the inside of your top here. And then we're going to need to run the cable down your front, probably around your waist, and then into a mic pack on the back that will have a Velcro waistband around you. If it's explained well, they'll go, okay, they can visualize it, they can imagine it, because they don't know what a WheezyCom is or Electrosonics is or whatever. They've got no idea what that stuff is. So they don't really know what the microphone is like. Like a lavalier microphone is something that, only our community of people understand. But outside of that, even in music, most people have not got a clue what it is. They're just like, what? They're picturing an SM58. That's what they're picturing. So clear explanation about it. If they're being really difficult and you can't get on board, and you can't, after having explained it, they're like, nope, don't want to do that, and nope, I don't want to wear the mic. And it's like, okay, fine. And then at that point, honestly, like, it's kind of out of your hands at this point. It's time to go back to the producer or back to the director or whoever's got this person, talent or actor or just member of the public, along, and say they really don't want to be mic'd, which is fair enough. What can we do about that? I can boom them, but obviously it's going to compromise the shot somewhat. If you want to get these wides and you want to have them also, having clear dialogue, it's a boom microphone. It's not a magic wand. Like, I can do what I can, but maybe you can make it work editorially a different way, and try and suggest things like, can we just get these wides and have them non-sync, and then we'll go in and pick up the dialogue? Yeah, okay, that will work. Well, great, let's do that then. And let's just bear in mind that we don't have that radio. So, if he's on that, like, 14 to 120 mil lens, and, like, we're going to be swinging between those two shots, I'm going to be in trouble. I'm going to be caught in the frame. So, working back and explaining those things, I think, would be the way I'd go about doing it. But honestly, I find just, like, having a really great manner with people is the way to do it. And honestly, like, not being afraid to explain things. Just saying, like, if it's okay, can we run the cable around the underwiring of your bra, if that's all right? And they go, oh, yeah, okay. I'm like, how do you know what underwiring of a bra is? And you go, well, I kind of have to do this every day. It makes them laugh. You're okay. You're away. Like, they're being mic'd up. That's fine. And likewise, just, you know, if a lady's wearing a top and then potentially has a vest top underneath, just say, like, do you have a vest top underneath? We could probably stick the mic to the inside of that, run the cable down, and, you know, and often, like, if you're stood in the middle of, like, you know, a whole bunch of people setting up lights and kang and clearing up their breakfast and whatever, just say, should we go over to one side and maybe we can go into this room and we can have a little chat about miking up there, just to give them a moment of privacy. That, you know, they might be all right with you miking them up, but they don't really want the whole rest of the crew in the middle of a set. And just think about it, like, you wouldn't want it done. So why are they going to want it done? And, you know, likewise, don't assume that because you're a guy and they're a guy that they're going to be okay, or you're a girl and they're a girl. It's not any different. Like, plenty of guys are really nervous about showing their tummy, I've had, and they don't want to lift up their t-shirt and they're really shy to do it. And, you know, even like, I've had guys who are in amazing physical shape and they're really nervous to lift up their t-shirt and they want just you to mic up around that. Work with them. Like, if you get it mic'd up, it's going to save you for the whole rest of the day when you've got that radio on them. If you make them feel uncomfortable and you're pushy and you just go, well, hey, buddy, I'm just trying to do my job or whatever, it's not going to help. They're going to hate you, and, you know, you're not going to have that lav on there, and then you're going to be screwed for the rest of the day.
Amazing. I think that's a kind of great way to end. We've come roughly on an hour already, so it's already time does fly when you're having fun. Cool. Are there any kind of I'll leave the floor to you for kind of any final thoughts? I don't know if you have any. I mean, obviously the main audience that are kind of watching this are doing all sorts of different stuff, but they're looking for maybe just a little insight you have. Can be something big, something small, something tactical, something strategic, even just recapping one of the most important things.
Sure. I know that a lot
you thought you covered today.
Yeah, I know that a lot of people, and I, you know, I get sent, you know, several emails a month of people asking who want to come and assist or want to come and, you know, get involved in the industry and that kind of thing. And I think that, like, I there's no way that I can get the amount of people that ask me to come and work with me, often for free, which I don't necessarily agree with. You know, there's no way that I could fill every single day with another assistant for the whole year, basically, with people that want to come on board and start in it. And I think that, you know, it's a dangerous trap to kind of just say, oh, I just want to come and shadow you or whatever. I think that meeting up with people outside of a work context could be a better thing to offer sometimes. If there's mixers that live in your town or city, they'll definitely have a spare Tuesday or a spare Wednesday when they're not working. And actually, if you say, can I just come and have a look at your gear and have a chat about it and get to know it, and that works, you know, like I would be up for that. If people want to come around and you know, talk about the kit and learn a bit more about it, that's fine. For loads of reasons, mostly in boring things like insurance and production companies being afraid, taking people along on what jobs like that is tricky. So I think that if you are starting out and you're finding it hard, obviously the short film route is great for going and trying out, you know, skills that you're learning and you're developing and stuff like that. And it's a really good way of testing all those things out. Certainly on some productions you can find yourself with a bunch of people who all went to college together. They're just looking for a soundie to fill in, and actually they are really shit hot. And all of a sudden you find yourself in hot water because you don't really know as much as they know. They almost know practically as much as you know about sound or whatever. So I think kind of like pick your gigs carefully. And one thing is, like, really don't be tempted to like lowball jobs and just trying to undercut. I think it's the way to, like, find, you know, we've talked about this before, but like it's a race to the bottom with that stuff, because you'll find yourself instantly loathed by the whole community, and they're often there to help, maybe not with work, but even just with like kit and that kind of stuff, or you know, when new things are coming out, or just borrowing stuff. You know, like I've got lots of friends that I work with in London where I just can say, oh, can I borrow your hydrophone? Yeah, sure, here it is. And it's like, there's no exchange of money. It's just like, oh, buy me a pint. Oh yeah, just, you know, it all kind of goes around, comes around. So I think that would be it's difficult. I know you've done videos about starting out, but that's one of the things I feel like I'm asked a lot, and it's difficult to find a really clear and concise answer. I would say you're way better to be running on a set or being a PA on set than you would be not working. Even if it's like, well, I want to, you know, do sound. I'd rather actually doing sound on a short film that never even gets to the edit suite is kind of useful, but like it's probably certainly as useful as PAing or running on a job where you're meeting producers, you're seeing it all work. You can then just like go and stand next to the sound guy who's really got no option but to listen to you at that point, and you know, like ask them some questions and offer up your services, because then they're a captive audience. Then, and if you're just sending out billions of dry emails to people, unsurprisingly, people don't get back to you. But you know, I just get working. You know, that's the key thing.
Fantastic. That's a brilliant way to end. And it might seem a bit crazy, but when this becomes a full video, actually, I'll put up a link to why you can get experience without undercutting as a kind of weird little hover thing here. And then a link to the rest of the sound chats, because some people are asking if there's going to be more of them. This is number 51, guys. Wow. So, yeah, if you haven't read or watched any of the others, then, yeah, I'm going to try and put them on a podcast as well. I think that makes more sense than just watching my face. So, yeah, with all that said, I guess that all that's left to say is goodbye, and thank you very much for everyone who's joining in. And I'll let you say the final goodbye, and we'll go backstage.
Thanks very much, Matt. It's a real pleasure to be on here. And if you want to, you know, follow my work, I'm at Instagram at Jono Cary Sound. My website's jonocary.com as well. So yeah, I post bits on Instagram there, and I'll try and I also have a YouTube account, which I guess you can probably link in the description or something.
Yeah, as well as your Instagram. Yeah,
I do bits and bobs of explanation of things. It's pretty scatty, but when I find something I don't know and I've really found it useful, I'll share it on YouTube as well. So yeah, you can link up to there as well.
Perfect, and that's all that's left. So until next time, see you later.